We're live.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise and thanks belong to God, the Lord of the worlds. May peace, blessings, and prayers be upon Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, and all of God's prophets and messengers. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of CAIR National, welcoming you to today's episode of the Muslim Action Hour, CAIR On AIR. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you are doing well and staying safe in these interesting and trying times for our nation. As you all know, we have now transitioned our program from the Daily Dose COVID Conversations with CAIR to CAIR On AIR, the Muslim Action Hour. The original show, The Daily Dose, aired every day, 3 o'clock, every weekday. And we try to focus primarily on issues related to impacted by COVID-19, but also other issues relevant to the Muslim community. As we got further and further into the pandemic, we realized that, we needed to be able to address some of the important issues that were happening around the country related to criminal justice, racism, and so many other issues that may not directly relate to the latest happenings with COVID-19. So we have now transitioned the program from the Daily Dose to CAIR On AIR, the Muslim Action Hour. This program will inshallah air every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock, inshallah. And so we welcome you to join us. And if you have any ideas for programs, please let us know. Suggested guests, let us know. This program, the idea is to focus on all the things that are relevant to the work of CAIR: Islamophobia, issues regarding justice, criminal justice reform, immigration, anything and everything that CAIR works on that is relevant to Islamophobia in our work. We want to address those topics in detail, inshallah. So we thank you all for your suggestions. We thank you for watching the show, and we welcome you to CAIR On AIR, the Muslim Action Hour. Now, today, our program, inshallah, is going to focus on the issue of discrimination in the workplace and also on the streets of our nation. We have two incidents that are very different but involve a similar violation of the legal rights that are guaranteed to every person of faith in this country. And that is the right to practice your faith without it being violated unnecessarily, unjustifiably by the government. We're going to welcome on in a bit Brother Hassan Shibly, who you all, I'm sure, know, attorney and executive director of CAIR Florida, as well as Zanah Ghalawanji, who is the staff attorney with CAIR National, both of them doing amazing work to serve, protect, and advocate for American Muslims who experience discrimination. Before we invite them on to speak, I want to note that today is a very somber and important day. Today is June 25th, which marks exactly 1 month since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis Police Department officers. Today also marks the birthday of Tamir Rice, who was shot and killed at the age of 12 while playing with a toy gun in a park by a police officer. So it would have been today his 18th birthday had he lived. MashaAllah, may Allah guide and comfort and grant justice to his family as well as the family of George Floyd. To mark this somber day and to deliver a message to Congress, today CAIR unveiled a new banner outside of our headquarters in Washington, D.C. This banner, which declares Black Lives Matter, calls on Congress to immediately pass the Justice and Policing Act. It also memorializes Mr. Floyd, Tamir Rice, and hundreds of other Black men and women who have lost their lives to racist police violence. We have the video of that banner being unveiled today. Can we play that for our audience, please? And again, this was earlier today outside CAIR National's headquarters in Washington, D.C. And if you all have not been to CAIR's headquarters, it's right by Capitol Hill. So congressmen and women, legislative aides pass by our office every day. So this is the message that will greet them now as they're walking to work every day. Go ahead and let's play the video.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Assalamu alaikum, peace be to you. I will start first by asking Robert McCaw to help us unveil the banner, Black Lives Matter. So go ahead, Robert. Bismillah.
Ion, you can pause it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So those, if you saw all the white, those were names of people dating back to from Emmett Till to more modern names like Rayshard Brooks. People have been killed by or with the complicity of police departments in this country. And so we remember them and we call on Congress to honor their memories by passing the Justice in Policing Act. It is coming up for a vote tonight in the U.S. House. Obviously, it's facing some opposition in the Senate. But we all intend to fight for it. And we want to note that this legislation is not enough. It doesn't go far enough, but it's a good step in the right direction to address the issue of anti-Black racism in policing and police brutality. So it's a good step, an important step, not enough, but let's take that first step by getting that bill passed. Please call your congressmen and women and encourage them to support it when it comes up for vote tonight, inshallah. Now, the topic of today's program is also the issue of discrimination and bigotry, but directed particular at women, Muslim women who have, in one case, put themselves in the front line by protesting injustice and experienced injustice while doing it, and another Muslim woman who stood up for her right to go to work while practicing her faith and was punished for it, as has happened far too many times in our country. To talk about these two issues and what CAIR is doing to address them, I want to invite on Zanah Ghalawanji first, staff attorney with CAIR National, and then after Zanah, we'll bring on Hassan Shibly of CAIR Florida. Can we bring on Zanah? Assalamu alaikum, Zanah. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of CAIR On Air, the Muslim Action Hour. So Zanah, first, let's talk about, we've talked a bit about the work that CAIR is doing to address anti-Black racism. I know your legal department has been watching this issue, and that, if we get cases in which that issue comes up, racism, especially racism intersecting with Islamophobia, we address those issues. So we appreciate you tackling that. And I want you to tell us today about this particular case you're working on, the case of Elon Brown, Mr. Elon Brown. Can you tell us about what's going on with that case, what the problem is, and what CAIR is doing to address that issue?
Yeah, so we actually just filed an employment discrimination complaint on behalf of an Indiana Muslim man, Mr. Elon Brown. He was employed through a staffing agency called Staff Max at a factory called Automatic Distributors. He, after he was hired, contacted his staffing agency and his supervisors at Automatic Distributors. He said, I'm a Muslim. I need accommodations to pray. I just need to be able to take short prayer breaks. I need a clean private space to pray. And I would like to be able to attend Jummah prayer or Friday congregational prayer at the mosque. So he asked for those accommodations, and his staffing agency said, you know what, these should have been communicated to us prior to you even starting at Automatic Distributors. And they were like, just follow up with them. He followed up with them, and they initially brushed him off. They didn't want to address his requests. So he followed up again, and he told them, let me know if I can have these accommodations. I'm willing to work with you so that I'm not causing any hardship on the company. And his supervisors responded, and they said, you know what, we just can't grant you these accommodations. If we give them to you, then we have to accommodate everybody else. And so they just blatantly denied him without any reason. And a few days later, he was fired. He followed up with the staffing agency and wanted to know why his job had been terminated. And they said, it's because you asked for these religious accommodations. So they told him, that he was fired because of his faith, because he requested those accommodations. And so we filed an employment complaint on his behalf.
And Zanah, what's remarkable about that is, the admission of the motivation behind it, right? Number one. Number two, that their explanation was, well, if we give you an accommodation, we have to give an accommodation to everyone, as if that's a problem. That's the point of the law, is that you accommodate people whether they're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu or whatever. If they request a reasonable religious accommodation, you work it out with them. So it's just remarkable. So what's the solution, Zanah? What are we looking for? Do we want him to get his job back? Do we want the company to be penalized? What's a good ending in this situation?
So, I mean, it's obvious that there is a broader concern here where you have a staffing agency and a company that are blatantly disregarding the law. They don't care to provide employees religious accommodations. They either don't know what the law is or just don't care. And so that really needs to change. They really need to make sure that they're following the law, that they're implementing policies that will allow people to request religious accommodations, that they're not discriminating against people. You can't fire somebody for asking for religious accommodation. You can't fire them because of their faith. So there's really a lot that has to happen here. It's these policy changes. We need sensitivity trainings. They need to train their supervisors about what the law is. And we're looking for damages too. You know, our client has been out of work. It was not his fault at all. He's never received any type of disciplinary action. His requests were reasonable, you know, and so we're really looking to remedy the situation through those three things. And we're hoping to get a positive finding from the EEOC, inshallah. So, yeah.
Inshallah. And that's good. I mean, that's so important that it's not just getting, you know, a financial, making them whole financially, but also making sure it doesn't happen to someone else again by training the company to make sure that they, if they didn't understand the law already, for some reason, they understand it now and make sure that they commit in verifiable ways to upholding the law. And that sort of training is important for businesses, but it's especially important when law enforcement violates someone's rights. And that brings me to, Zanah, as you know, our next guest, who we're going to bring on to join you now, Hassan Shibly, attorney and executive director of CAIR Florida. Can we bring on Brother Hassan and have him join the conversation, inshallah, and tell us about the case that CAIR Florida is working on that is different, but also has gets to a somewhat similar issue. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. How are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What a privilege and an honor to be with two of my superheroes here, mashallah. Brother Edward and Sister Zanah, may Allah bless you for the tremendous work you guys do day in and day out for protecting our faith, our freedom, and our liberty to practice our faith without fear of intimidation or harassment. Jazakallah khairan.
I mean, you as well, brother. So Hassan, tell us about, I mean, we could talk about so much with you, given how active CAIR Florida is, how much work you do, and how many complaints you get, how many issues there are in Florida that you're all working to solve. But we want to highlight this one issue, this one case that you're working on. My understanding, Muslim woman who went out there to speak up against the injustice of police brutality and experienced injustice while out there. And then I think this dovetails with what Zanah is talking about because some of the solutions to this problem might be similar. But first, Hassan, tell us about the case, what you're working on.
Yeah, and I'm really troubled to learn of a potential second case we just got word about today by the same exact police department. So let me tell you about the first case and maybe a little bit of update about the potential second, and then some of the history and some of what we're going to do for the future. But, you know, really, Sister Alaa Masri is somebody who I've gotten to know over the last couple of weeks since her arrest, is just really an ideal community member. I mean, in fact, we're hoping we can get her to intern with us at CAIR Florida. I mean, she's a young American Muslim woman, proudly wearing the hijab and advocating for the civil rights of other communities, standing at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movement and protests in South Florida. And she was actually acting as a volunteer medic to assist those who needed medical attention in light of the protests. In Florida, even if a protest is perfect, you're going to need medical attention there because it's just so hot and people are marching for miles in the heat. They get sunstroke, you know, so it's very important you have a team of medical volunteers available. And she was out there on the front lines assisting peaceful, nonviolent protesters and there was somebody, unfortunately, who needed medical attention. And we have the video. It's on my Instagram. Alaa rushed to assist them. And the next thing she knows, she's basically being tackled by a number of police officers who wrongfully arrested her, charged her with a felony of resisting arrest. And she's, as she mentions herself, she's a 100-pound girl. She can't effectively really resist 5 huge 200, 300-pound officers, you know. So they charged her with a felony. They took her, removed her hijab during the booking process, and then denied her the hijab for the entirety of the time that she was in their custody. And then what made matters worse is that picture without the hijab was released online, where, you know, a lot of news outlets actually then amplified that picture and put that picture on their websites. Now, alhamdulillah, most of the mainstream press had the honor and the dignity to remove those pictures and not to air those pictures. But you have Islamophobes who've created fake Twitter accounts who are selling these pictures or just blasting these pictures just because they want to have the pride of, you know, trying to humiliate the Muslim community, that look, we got one of your Muslim women who wear hijab. Well, this is her picture without hijab. But they're just sick individuals who just don't respect people's privacy and people's dignity and honor. So we're very proud of Ella because she's been outspoken. She you know, there was a petition created in her defense, and it already gotten over 100,000 signatures. At CAIR Florida, we created a fundraiser to support her legal defense. And her main concern is, I don't want this to happen to anybody else again. And frankly, at CAIR Florida, we've been dealing with this issue for years. The problem is every single police department and correctional facility is relatively independent, and they have their own policies. So we're trying to tackle it with the Florida Department of Corrections and whatever influence they have on the local departments, but we're also been trying to tackle it jail by jail. So I'll give you a great example. In Hillsborough County, we reached out to that sheriff's department years ago, and we offered them training and to review their policies, and they actually worked with us voluntarily to amend their policies. So alhamdulillah, if somebody gets arrested, and I remember when I trained the Hillsborough County Department, an officer came to me and said, you know, I remember I arrested a Muslim woman at USF, and she was wearing the hijab. And I remember when we removed her hijab, she was crying. And he said, I feel so bad that I did that. I will never do that again. And their policies have been changed to prohibit them from doing that again. So alhamdulillah, in Hillsborough County, we were able to get them voluntarily changed. Another county, Duval County, we actually went to them because they were forcing Muslim men to shave their beard. So, and they didn't respect the hijab. So I went on a Sunday and I met with the Muslims there. Then I said, let me meet. I want to meet with the leadership. Of course, it was Sunday. They didn't have any leadership for me to meet. I said, okay, leadership doesn't want to meet with me. I don't care. It's Sunday. We're going to call you out. And, you know, sometimes people say we're too aggressive, but honestly, authority respects authority. So what I did is I went on Facebook Live and I threatened to sue the jail right outside the jail. And I tagged the jail so all their leadership would see it. And I told the community, I said, show the strength we got. So people started donating online. We raised $5,000 to sue the jail. And then I walked in the next day. When I walked in the next day, all their leadership was waiting for me. Alhamdulillah, they rolled out the red carpet. They said, listen, we saw the video. They literally mentioned the Facebook video. They said, they saw the video. Don't worry. You don't have to sue us. We're going to work with you. So they voluntarily amended the policy. But to wrap up, the problem is, you know, we got a couple of counties voluntarily willing to amend their policies. But a lot of counties, they're only going to do it through a lawsuit. And it's tough to do a lawsuit because a lot of people are afraid to come forward. You know, they're afraid to speak out. And so finding Alaa, who's just been so brave and willing to speak out, I think, inshallah, we can set a precedent for the whole state of Florida that if a Muslim woman is arrested, she's not deprived of her right to wear hijab, which, listen, I don't care what your opinion is on it. We're all in agreement on this. I know Zanah and, you know, we're on the same page. It is a right for women to keep their hijab when they're arrested. It's just a right. And some people disagree. Oh, they shouldn't be able to if they're arrested. No, it's their right. The law is settled, and there's been six-figure settlements across the country, and we will uphold that right. And I want to thank Zanah, and I want to thank you, Edward, and the whole CAIR National team for just doing so much good work about this across the country. Honestly, you guys are my heroes, and I appreciate the great work Zanah and Edward and the entire legal team at CAIR National is doing on these issues.
Alhamdulillah. Zanah, you have dealt with similar cases like this at the national level. I think you're keenly aware that a big problem is that there's no national rule that requires police departments to accommodate the hijab, or for that matter, the beard. I know, I think a South Carolina case you and I worked on together when I was with CAIR Georgia. Can you talk about what problems you've seen in this regard in terms of how Muslims are treated if they are arrested in terms of their hijabs or their beards? What kind of work has been going on, what you've seen at the national level?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a multitude of problems, and I think Hassan really did a good job touching on those. It's that there is no really one police department that's telling all the other police departments, this is the policy, this is what we have to follow. You have police departments that have good policies in place, and you have ones that don't have good policies in place. And the ones that don't have the good policies in place, you're like, is it that they just don't understand the religious beliefs? Is it that they just don't understand the law? Are they blatantly disregarding the law? And so you kind of have to figure out which of those issues is happening. And with people that just don't understand the belief, you know, maybe we can work with them and they're open to working with us and learning about Islam and how they can accommodate Muslims. But then you have others that are blatantly disregarding the law. And at that point, you know, communicating, having those conversations, they're not really open to them. And we have to look into filing the bigger lawsuits, which take a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of work. And alhamdulillah, we have been able to find some people who are willing to come forward. And that's really helped us make those policy changes, because without those people willing to come forward, we just can't do our work. But, it is definitely a broader issue across the country. And it's one that we come across all the time. And it's something that we're actively working on to fix. And inshallah, we'll be able to.
Inshallah. And it's just an important point that the people, when they experience this, the willingness to come forward. I mean, some people, if they are arrested, they may not want to tell anyone about it. They may not want to talk about it. They just may want to move on with their lives. And so it takes bravery, number one, to put yourself out there on the front line of a protest, helping people, confronting all these giant officers. And in fact, we have, what CAIR did was he created I'll show you briefly, a blurred video that doesn't show anything of her, but I'll show this briefly so you can see, what happened to her. And as Hassan noticed here, you'll see the sister being surrounded by a group of officers who were bigger than her, armed to the teeth. You see, dressed for war. There's the sister right there, trying to help people, calm people down, give people direction. You see this bedlam chaos. And then the video is you'll see a zoom in on her. Right now, she's in here in this little spot here. And it's very fast, but you see all these, those are the officers who grabbed her there. 3 or 4 officers right there, grabbing her, targeting her, taking her away and taking off her hijab eventually. So Hassan, what's the game plan? I mean, do you think what's the end result for this? I mean, what's a good ending for you in your mind for this situation?
Well, number one is the charges completely dismissed against her. She's facing ridiculous and frivolous, but very serious at the same time, criminal felony charges, which simply just don't make sense. Felony, actually punishable by up to 5 years in jail. So it's extremely problematic. And I think that dropping the charges has to be the first thing. Number two, frankly, it has to be termination of all officers involved in violating her rights. We cannot, in the post-George Floyd world, accept anything less than termination when it comes to serious civil rights violations. Because, George Floyd was killed, I believe, the day other officers did more minor civil rights offenses and got a slap on the wrist. And the problem is, in the United States, we have a culture where you have officers with a dozen civil rights violations or complaints, and they just keep getting recycled within the same agency or different agencies. You have to send a strong message that we're not going to allow that to continue. Number three, a complete revision of their policies. And number four, training, that's facilitated on this issue for all their officers. As I mentioned, CAIR Florida has done that for Hillsborough County. We can facilitate it for them as well. And number five, there has to be financial remuneration, compensation. It's been very traumatic. I know, she's brave, she's courageous, she's very young, she's overwhelmed, and her picture has been just shared all over the World Wide Web. And it does cost money to be able to fix that and repair that. And honestly, I think that's the only way to learn a lesson. So those are the issues. And then finally, I think it's very important that we proactively work across the state to change the policies so that this doesn't ever happen again. And I'll tell you, I'm very disturbed because just today I got another phone call that another woman by the same police department.
What department is this, by the way?
Miami Police Department. Miami-Dade Police Department.
It's a very diverse city.
They're one of the worst. It's a diverse city, but they got a lot of work to do. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to a lot of jails. They really set the bar for how bad it is. There's jails. I visited jails in the middle of the night in Hillsborough County. Officers are respectful, showing inmates which way the qibla is, helping them with, making sure they can do wudu, just going above and beyond to accommodate their rights. And then you have this jail where when I actually called the jail, I spoke to the watch commander. I said, listen, you guys open yourself up for serious litigation. He said, no, we have a right to remove the hijab. I'm like, excuse me, you don't know what you're talking about. You want me to give you the list of all the lawsuits where there's been 6-figure payments? So this is why it's very important for everybody watching. Make sure you have a strong local CAIR chapter and support your local CAIR chapter. And if you don't have a local CAIR chapter, reach out to CAIR National and get a local CAIR chapter established, because we don't want to wait till it's too late. Alhamdulillah, I will tell you, this issue we saw in Miami, inshallah, we won't see in Hillsborough County or in Duval County, because we work proactively to reach out to audit their policies and get their policies changed. Very important. Don't wait till this happens to somebody. Go ahead and proactively, through an institution like CAIR, work with your local jails, make sure they change the policy, because this can happen to any one of us. You know, these people that are arrested, they're arrested for supporting protesters, not doing anything bad. But, you know, how many of us have gotten a speeding ticket before in our life? And then you forget to pay the speeding ticket. You know, it happens, or you pay it, but it gets lost in the mail. Next time you're arrested, next time you're pulled over, you get arrested because you didn't pay a parking fine or a speeding ticket, and then you end up in jail. This isn't the first time we've had to help a woman wrongfully arrested, unfortunately. We have to be proactive in pushing for these changes. And the ability to be proactive depends on the strength of your local CAIR chapter. So please support CAIR National and support your local CAIR chapter.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Brother Hassan. Zanah, as we wrap up here, you know, what final thoughts do you want to share? Are you optimistic that this case we're dealing with in Indiana will be successful? And I know you all, you know, you're bouncing around the country because if there's a state without a CAIR chapter, that's where CAIR National will respond and go and help people out. So I know you all are very busy, but are you optimistic that, you know, you'll be able to get a victory in this case in Indiana?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely optimistic. Whether, you know, if the company reaches out and wants to kind of settle the matter and work together, that's great. If we have to resort to a lawsuit, you know, that's something that's on the table. I'm confident that we're going to be able to resolve it either way. And yes, we are handling complaints all over the country, especially in those states that don't have CAIR chapters. And what Hassan was saying, it's really important that we establish CAIR chapters there. If you don't have a CAIR chapter too, just reach out to us and we'll handle the complaint, inshallah. We're doing a lot of amazing work all over the country. It's super exciting.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, may Allah reward you. You know, I love having both of you on because, you know, sometimes people say, what do these civil rights groups do? They just, you know, they're in the media and they don't do, I mean, Hassan is going to jails in the middle of the night. Zain is helping individual people. You don't see this stuff on the media. It's not a thing that people know about, but it's just helping individual people. They know they need the help. Allah knows they need the help. So may Allah reward you all for what you do, especially the things that no one knows about except you and the people you are helping to serve. And may Allah guide us all to be beneficial to our neighbors. So Hassan, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you back again soon on CAIR On Air, the Muslim Action Hour. We have so many things we could discuss with you, inshallah. So please come back soon, inshallah. And Zain, of course, always a pleasure to have you on. May Allah reward you all and grant you continued success in serving, protecting, and defending Muslims in America and justice in America. Assalamu alaikum to both.
Jazakallah khair.
And thank you all for joining today's episode of CAIR On Air, the Muslim Action Hour. We hope to see you again next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, inshallah, for our next program. And again, if you have suggestions, guests, topics that you want us to address, just send us an email at info@cair.com, info@cair.com, or drop a message in the comment section. And again, on this day, June 25th, the 1 month anniversary, 1 month since George Floyd lost his life under the knee of a police officer, as well as what would have, you know, God willing, been Tamir Rice's 18th birthday. We remember them, and we pray that God comforts, guides, and grants justice to their families. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Assalamu alaikum.